I'm Colby Gibbonville, and I'd like to welcome you to the campus of Middle Tennessee State University and the Center for Student Coaching and Success. The vision of the Center for Student Coaching and Success is to help MTSU students become gainfully employed in their chosen career path prior to walking across the stage at graduation. You know, success is a word that we constantly hear, and that is now a constant on a college campus. And I think it's important that we are very intentional about the success that we're trying to create within this center. And so if you look at the typical definition of success, if you look at some of the typical definitions of success, you may find some of the following. To pick yourself up off the ground just one more time. Athletes know that definition. The continued expansion of happiness, the setting and achieving of worthy goals. These are all typical definitions that we hear when we talk about success. The best definition of success that I've heard, and that when I heard it, I thought this needs to be part of an academic footprint to address the challenging gap between approaching graduation, and securing gainful employment. It's the Rose definition of success. And if you come to our center and you walk through our door into the main entrance, you will see this quote. And the Rose definition of success is to advance confidently in the direction of your own dream and to endeavor to live a life that only you can imagine, where you will find uncommon success in common hour. And so the reason that I share that with you today is this uncommon success in common hour, I think, is unfolding as we put the programming of the 5 to Arrive together. The foundation of the 5 to Arrive is a model that I've created that's focused on helping students speed up the adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge. You see, it's how we process, how we absorb information that ultimately is the starting point for how we separate ourselves from others. It's how we adopt and retain information that ultimately is the starting place for how we separate ourselves from others in this thing called the marketplace of ideas, which is the new economy that we live in. And so you've clicked on this podcast, and hopefully you see the model itself, the self-directed, self-selected coaching model. And ultimately, this model is not only a model that speeds up the adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge, it's also a model that, if used properly, will allow students to become self-directed in the discovery of that market-specific knowledge. And so what I'd like to do is go through the model with you step by step so that you take notes and understand this process. Because once you understand this, and it does take time, but once you understand this, then you'll start to see just how powerful technology can be and just how easy it is to become self-directed in how you adopt and retain and acquire information. So I tried to make this as easy as possible because I think that simplicity itself is what makes things better. So if you look at this model, you'll notice that just right down the middle, there's 2 lines that separate 3 words. Those 3 words are innovation, reality, and hard work. Innovation, reality, and hard work. Innovation, in the context of the model, means you go first. And so you say to yourself, well, I go first where? Well, you go first to the market-specific knowledge that will allow you to separate yourself from others. Innovation means you go first. And so instead of the typical approach of overwhelming students with large, sterile textbooks and 60 to 70 slide PowerPoints, I've tried to take a different approach that makes them active participants in this process. You see, I think that each class that they decide to take should have core concepts and theories. Those concepts and theories ultimately allow students to create frameworks for themselves. Concepts are big picture ideas. Theories are those big picture ideas that have been tested and proven to be true or not true. Concepts are big picture ideas, and theories are ideas that have been tested to be proven true or not true. W. Deming, the father of modern statistics, said this. He said, without theory, there are no questions, and without questions, there is no learning. And so this model is built to first teach students to understand that they need to focus on key concepts and theories in each class that they choose to take. Those concepts and theories provide frameworks that allow the student to create predictability, structure, and efficiency in how they ultimately solve problems and make decisions. And as this unfolds, I'll be able to give you some examples along the way. Let me just give you one example of a framework that comes from a theory and that comes from a concept. Let's say that we're talking about in management. I teach classes in sport management, which is what my background is. But let's say that one of the challenges that someone faces is the engagement of people. How can we get our people to produce greater results? And so a framework that might come from the study of different theories of motivation and different concepts related to motivation, a framework that they might see in this process would be that people typically have 4 universal needs. Those 4 typical or 4 universal needs are opportunities to learn, grow in responsibility, contribute to others, and be recognized. Those come straight from several pieces related to several different theories of motivation. So the model is first built to get students to recognize what are those core concepts and what are those core theories related to the class that they've decided to take. Then how can they take those and through a process of discovery create frameworks that allow them to create predictability, structure, and efficiency in how they ultimately solve problems and make decisions. Once they decide on those frameworks and how they want to bring those theories to life, then they're able to go to Google and find a podcast, an article, a video, or a blog related to those theories or frameworks. That's where the market-specific knowledge is. Tell me about the podcast, the article, the video, the blog that you found. Where did it come from? How is it able to help you create market-specific knowledge? And then if you'll see at the very bottom of that first phase of innovation, which means you go first to direct yourself to the market-specific knowledge that you need to be successful in your chosen career path, where you ultimately want to be gainfully employed, there are 2 questions that I believe turn learning into action. The first question is, why is this information important to me? The second question is, what am I going to do with the information to drive my business or life forward? To me, those are the 2 questions that turn learning into action. So it's concepts and theories that direct themselves to think about frameworks that provide predictability, structure, and efficiency to help them think about how to ultimately solve problems and make decisions, that lead them to articles, blog, video, podcasts that give them market-specific knowledge, and the filter for that podcast, article, video, blog filter is, why is the information important to them and how will they use the information? What am I going to do with this information to drive my business or my life forward? That's the first phase of innovation, which means you go first. You go first towards the market-specific knowledge. This is how we speed up the adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge. The second phase of the model is called reality. And it's called reality simply because I believe this is the reality that we all face should we decide to lead people or manage resources. Here's what we know when we lead people and manage resources. We wake up every day and we're asked to solve problems and make decisions. And how we solve those problems and make those decisions define the results that we're all judged by. Managers are judged by results. Those results ultimately define whether we move up in our careers, down in our careers, and that's either being employed by ourselves or being employed through others, or stay right where we are. And this phenomenon of staying right where we are is called the Peter Principle. And the Peter Principle is this idea that we all rise to our highest level of incompetence, and that's where we stay. Now, when I first talk to students about this, one of the things that's interesting is that they believe it's we all rise to our highest level of potential, and that's where we stay. The more that I spend time coaching others, we all reach this ceiling, this challenge, this place in our career where we can't see past it. And if we can't see past that, this is the highest level of incompetence. I believe truly the only way you can break through this level of incompetence is through coaching. It's through some kind of systematic coaching where you receive feedback, where ultimately someone can help you see, either because you don't know, you don't see it yourself, or you're not sure how to do it. Leaders who lead people, managers who manage resources, are asked every day to solve problems and make decisions. How they decide to solve those problems and make those decisions, to find the results that they create for the organization and themselves. It's what their career is known for. It's called their reputation. And that ultimately defines whether they move up, down, or stay right where they are. And right where you are is this phenomenon called the Peter Principle. This is reality. All right, so that's a little bit about reality. Try to keep that as simple as possible. Every day we wake up and we have to solve problems and make decisions. Every day in leadership, in leading people, managing resources, those ultimately define the results that we create for ourselves and the organization. Those results define whether we move up in our careers, down in our career, or stay right where we are, which is this ceiling that we all at some point experience called the Peter Principle. Why is that important to you? Why is that important as you take a step back to try to understand how to speed up the adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge, which truly is what this model was built to do? This model was built on this simple idea that we all want to connect to others or feel connected. And this model allows, I think, a greater opportunity for students to connect to material that they find indeed significant to their own career path. And so if we understand that that truly is what reality is, the reality phase that's found in the self-directed, self-selected coaching model, then it begins to change the way that we decide how to process information. Let's take a step back and let's look at innovation again. And let's make sure that we understand it. So let's say that you're in a course, and the course is on college athletics, high school athletics. And so you're going to identify those particular challenges. If in fact reality is how we solve problems and make decisions, then one of the things that we need to understand is truly what are some of those problems that the industry faces. And so one true challenge that administrators face at the college level is in fact how do they fund the athletic programs. So the question that I posed to a class here recently: should athletic directors actively pursue corporate sponsorship in order to fund or underwrite their sport, their athletic programs? It's a question that many continue to try to debate and understand today. Should they? Should corporate sponsors be a part of the high school sport landscape? Well, the very first thing you have to understand are what are the concepts or theories related to that. What are the concepts or theories related to that? And then once you understand what those concepts, those big picture ideas are, and those theories, sponsorship in itself is a theory. Once you understand what concepts and theories make up the body of knowledge related to this question, then you can start to better understand how to solve it. And that's the power of this model. Because if you look at the third phase, the final phase, it's called hard work for a reason. Because what we're asking you to do through the self-directed, self-selected coaching model is in fact direct yourself to market-specific knowledge that's related to ultimately what you want to become, your chosen career path. But in the hard work phase, we move from being self-directed to self-selected. And self-selected, the term that self-selected is used because ultimately you're selecting how to write the problem. Because what we've realized, hopefully up to this point, once you've been exposed to this model, what you'll realize is that how you write the problem ultimately defines how you solve the problem. How you write a problem ultimately defines how you solve the problem. So let me give you an example. Recently, I posed that question to one of my classes. Should high school athletic administrators actively pursue corporate sponsorship in order to fund or underwrite their athletic programs? And here's the context that I gave. I said, we've all heard the saying that better schools make better communities. And I think that's a widely accepted concept. But it made me ask this question: well, what do better sports make? And better sports make better people. If you have better coaches, better facilities, one would think that ultimately you would have a better experience and the outcome would hopefully be better people. But if you look at hard work, the phase of hard work in the self-directed, self-selected coaching model, the very first box that we see there, and there's 3 of them in this section, in this phase, and it ultimately says how you write the problem defines how you solve a problem. And then underneath that, you'll see a framework that I've created that are the key pieces in how to build an effective problem statement. And they include audience, stat, state, and call to action. Audience, stat, state, and call to action. So typically in my courses, what we will do is identify the real challenges that face the industry, the real problems that the industry faces, and then we will go through the model, find the market-specific knowledge related to concepts and theories and frameworks, so that we can truly understand and gain some kind of clarity about the real challenge. And then from there, we can write an effective problem statement. So let me give you an example of one of my students in their very first attempt to write a problem statement. This is what this person wrote. According to UpToUsSports.com, $3.5 billion was cut from school sports budgets from 2009 to 2011. And by 2020, an estimated 27% of U.S. public high schools will no longer have any sports teams or programs of any kind. Every year, many high school athletic programs have their budgets cut and have to make tough decisions regarding cutting sports. A lack of interscholastic sports is detrimental to students because sports provides a safe haven for many students. Many believe that interscholastic sports are beneficial to the overall well-being of student athletes. According to Brandon Marshall, an NFL player, believes that there's things that we learn on the field, on the court, that we can't learn in the classroom. Schools who struggle to maintain financially stable after budget cuts should be allowed to seek corporate sponsorships. Seeking corporate sponsors will help keep high school athletic programs stable and will improve the program as well. If state and local governments cannot fund athletic programs, they should be allowed to seek corporate sponsorship to fund those programs. This was his first attempt at writing a problem statement. And while it's not perfect, what it does show you is just how powerful this model is, because he took the framework of audience, stat, state, and call to action and used it in how he positioned his stance about that particular problem. Because he chose to write it in this way will ultimately lead him to how he chooses to solve the problem. And we've built in the model, we've built a problem-solving model inside of the self-selected phase. Remember, it's called self-selected because how you write the problem, how you select truly what the problem is and communicate that to others is how ultimately you will solve it. And so the problem-solving model that we've included, that is the next step in this process, is problem, cause, consequence, solution, action. What truly is the problem? And that's developed through the effective problem statement. What caused it? What's the consequence if we don't do anything about it? What are some solutions and their upsides and downside? And what ultimately is the action that we will take? How you write the problem will define how you solve the problem. You'll notice that the next block is the outcome. But one of the things that I teach is that the outcome is never the final outcome, because if you look at the next block, ultimately it's feedback, and feedback is where you learn the most. And if you get feedback, you can ultimately change the outcome. You will also note that underneath how you write the problem defines how you solve the problem, that there is a reference to when words decide. And that comes from an article that looks at how people use language in order to impact how others make decisions. And so that's part of this model as well, is that you'll have the opportunity to be exposed to those ideas found in the article when words decide, and use that as you first speed up the adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge. Second, truly understand what reality is. And third, do the hard work necessary in how you write the problem and ultimately how you solve the problem. The self-directed, self-selected coaching model is the foundation of the 5 to arrive. Ultimately, the goal is to help you become a self-directed, lifelong learner and understand that how you ultimately decide to acquire information is one of the key factors in separating yourself from those people that are entering the workforce, that are entering the job markets. And those people that have the ability to speed up that adoption and retention of market-specific knowledge will be the ones that will be successful. This model, the self-directed, self-selected coaching model, is a culmination of the 15 plus years that I've built academic programs and taught at institutions of higher learning. And I think it speaks to the simple idea that people want to feel connected. They want to connect and feel connected. And so if that's the case, and we do understand that and believe that it is true, and I do believe that it's at the most basic level that people have this need to connect and feel connected, then at some point we have to ask ourselves, how are we connecting people to information? How are we connecting people to market-specific knowledge? This model was built so that each person individually can connect with the material in ways that are indeed significant to them. There'll be other resources that will be available that will help you process this information, process this model. It does take time to process it and to understand it. And then it takes even more effort and time to make it part of your day-to-day life. And so it usually takes a couple of instances of going through the model to a place where you feel comfortable in thinking about how you want to frame up the problem and how you ultimately want to solve the problem. You being exposed to concepts, theories, and frameworks will ultimately allow you to have a better understanding of truly what the problem is and how you want to solve it. I'm Colby Jubenville, and this is the Center for Student Coaching and Success on the campus of Middle Tennessee State University.